Welcome back, everyone. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment below. Your support means a lot. Tonight's story comes from Blackpine Camp, a place hidden deep in the woods where something dark waits among the trees. Turn off the lights and let's begin. The Toyota Corolla was a rust-eaten thing, a vehicle held together by stubbornness more than any structural integrity, yet somehow its speakers persisted, grinding out the faded remnants of whatever station Jess had found. She sat in the passenger seat, legs propped against the dashboard, scrolling through her phone, determined to be anywhere but there. Every so often, her hand shot out to strike my arm, thrusting the screen toward me to display images I could not see and probably would not have understood if I had. Behind us, the back seat held Kyle, Luke, and Rachel, arranged in the uncomfortable intimacy of three young adults forced to be closer than they wanted. Kyle clutched a styrofoam cup, its contents a mystery, wearing the expression of a man perpetually on the verge of delivering a story you would rather not hear. Luke was quieter by a good bit, his interests tending toward hiking and survival, skills that had elevated him to the position of our designated nature guy after Jess had declared such a role was needed. Rachel served as our anchor, the one who kept us tethered when circumstances spun toward chaos, as they inevitably did whenever Jess and Kyle occupied the same space. The drive itself passed pleasantly enough. The sky stretched wide, cloudless and blue, touched by a light breeze. The road wound through landscapes of startling beauty. Scattered houses appeared and dwindled, surrendering finally to dense forest. By the time we found the gravel road that would lead us to the camp, it seemed we had slipped the moorings of the everyday and drifted into some beautifully forgotten territory. The camp sign emerged from the trees, wooden and chipped, Blackpine Camp. We cheered. I pulled into the gravel lot, silenced the engine, and stepped out. The air carried the scent of pine and earth, hot and clean, and everything was exactly as it should be. The car doors slammed in sequence. Jess stretched with theatrical exaggeration, her flannel shirt riding up as she groaned. God, I think my legs forgot how to work. Cry me a river, Kyle said, tossing his cup toward a trash bin. Try the middle seat for 3 hours. Rachel produced a laminated camp map. Okay, according to this, the main cabin is just up that path. That's where we'll find the supply closet and hopefully coffee. Coffee's priority one, huh? Luke asked, adjusting his pack. You don't want me uncaffeinated, Rachel said. Trust me. Blackpine Camp resembled a postcard, at least initially. Rustic cabins arranged in a semicircle around a gravel clearing centered on a fire pit. Beyond, trees stretched to the horizon, branches swaying. Okay, Kyle snorted. Where's the creepy guy with the hook for a hand? He's late. Shut up, Kyle, Jess said, moving toward the largest cabin, what might have been a mess hall. This place does have serious summer camp horror vibes, though. I'm into it. Perfect, I said. That's exactly the energy we need, Jess, summoning Jason Voorhees on day one. I'm just saying, Jess shot back, pushing the door open and peeking inside. If I hear one creepy noise tonight, I'm leaving you all behind. Except for you, Michael, maybe. Noted, I said, following her in. The interior smelled of wood and dust, sunlight slicing through gaps in the shutters. Long wooden tables filled the space, most draped in cobwebs. Kyle entered behind us, kicking at a bench. I'm digging this. Less digging, more cleaning, Rachel said, appearing with a bucket and mop. The sooner we get this place livable, the sooner we can relax. We spent the next couple of hours splitting up and tackling different parts of the camp. Luke cleared debris from the fire pit, while Rachel claimed the mess hall. And from the way she grimaced when she pushed through its door, I suspected she had found the summer's accumulation of dead insects waiting for her. Kyle and Jess claimed the sleeping cabins, which turned out to be thick with the kind of fine, gray grime that only time and neglect can produce, but otherwise remarkably whole. That left me in charge of unloading the food and gear. I was making my second trip, a cooler hoisted against my hip, when I noticed Jess standing in the open doorway of one of the cabins. She wasn't moving. Her arms were folded across her chest, and she was staring at something inside with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Hey, Mike," she called out. "Come look at this." I set the cooler down in the grass and walked over. "What's wrong?" She gestured into the cabin. "Tell me that isn't strange." I ducked inside and saw what she meant immediately. Hanging from the ceiling was a small bundle of sticks and feathers, tied together with an old piece of string. It looked homespun. "Huh," I said, and reached up toward it. "Don't." Jess's hand shot out, catching my wrist before I could make contact. "Don't touch it, why not?" "Seriously? 'Cause it's creepy as hell, and I don't want to end up cursed because you decided to poke at it like some kind of idiot." "It's probably just someone's old craft project," I said. "Camp stuff? Right, sure." Her eyes stayed fixed on the object. "Well, you can deal with it later. I'm not sleeping in here with that thing watching over me." Kyle stuck his head in the door. "Hey, lovebirds, quit slacking. Luke says the fire pit's ready." "We're not slacking," Jess snapped, her shoulder catching his. "And I'm not a lovebird." "Whatever you say." Kyle grinned innocent. "Why are you into her again?" We regrouped by the fire pit just as the sun started to dip below the trees. Luke had set up a circle of old camp chairs and Rachel had brought out a bag of marshmallows she'd found in our gear. "See?" Rachel said, rotating a marshmallow over the coals. "This is what I'm talking about. No phones, no obligations. Just us and the wilderness. This is living." The fire was dying down when the first weird noise reached us. At first I thought it was just the wind playing tricks. None of us said anything about it, too caught up in the moment. Kyle was in the middle of one of his stories, something about a haunted amusement park, his hands carving over enthusiastic shapes in the firelight. And then the clown's head just, he clapped his palms together, pops right off. Blood everywhere. "Nice," Jess said, throwing a marshmallow at him. "Thanks for that. Very scary." "Come on, that was gold," Kyle replied, catching the marshmallow midair. "You're just jealous of my storytelling abilities." "I'm jealous of anyone who doesn't have to listen to your storytelling abilities." "Wait." "Guys, shh," Luke interrupted. "Do you hear that?" For a moment, there was only the crackling of the fire and the occasional chirp of crickets. Then I heard it. A faint mumbling, almost like someone talking to themselves. It was coming from the direction of the wood line just beyond the clearing. "What is that?" Rachel asked. "Wind?" I said, though I was unconvinced. "No way," Jess muttered, standing up. "That's a voice. Someone's out there." "Yeah, a person who wants to murder us in our sleep," Kyle joked. "Boo," Rachel sighed. "No, seriously, we need to check this out." "What if it's someone who needs help? Or someone with an axe?" Kyle added. "My vote is not following the voices in the woods." Jess rolled her eyes and grabbed one of the flashlights. "Shut up, we'll never know unless we look." "Don't be a baby, Kyle." Reluctantly, we all grabbed whatever makeshift weapons we could find and followed Jess. The sound grew louder as we neared the edge of the clearing. The mumbling was almost hypnotic, rising and falling in a set of odd jitters and cooing. We swept our flashlights around when the noise felt like it was in our ears. That's when we saw her, an elderly woman dragging herself through the dirt on hands and knees, body bent into a posture that spoke of something more than an injury. Something closer to abandonment, skin pale and loose and papery, drawn taut over a frame so wasted that the bones of her shoulders and hips pressed against it, threatening to tear through. She was naked, utterly, and her grey hair hung in lank, uneven curtains around a face we could not see. "Jesus Christ," Jess whispered. "Is she okay? Does she look okay?" Kyle hissed. Rachel took a step forward, her shoes crunching against the forest floor. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She continued crawling, her hands scooping at the dirt, fingers curling into the earth as if she might pull herself down into it. She mumbled to herself, the words slurring together, a language that belonged to no one, that perhaps had never belonged to anyone. "Ma'am." Rachel tried again. "Do you need help?" Still nothing, so Luke swung the flashlight to her face. She did not react to the sudden brilliance. Her eyes shined, fixed on some vacancy that existed only for her. "Maybe she's deaf," Jess suggested. "And she's naked," Kyle said. "Why the hell is she naked?" "Stop," Rachel said. She held her hands out, the universal gesture of peace, of harmlessness. "Hey, it's okay. We're not going to hurt you. Can you tell us what's wrong?" The woman stopped crawling. For a moment, there was only the wind soughing through the trees. Then slowly, so slowly, she turned her head toward Rachel. The woman's face was sunken, cheekbones angular ridges. Her mouth hung open slightly, and she simply stared, her eyes glimmering at something standing directly behind us. "Holy shit," Jess breathed. Rachel retreated a step. Okay, maybe we should—" The woman turned away before the sentence could finish, resuming her strange, crooked crawl toward the tree line. "Ma'am, wait," Rachel called after her, but the woman didn't stop. Her mumbling resumed, hands, things ending in knobs of bone, clutched at the ground as she disappeared into the darkness. "What the fuck was that?" Kyle said, shaking. "Oh, this is some bullshit." "I don't know," Luke said, lowering the light. "But I don't think we should follow her." "Follow her?" Jess snapped. "Who the hell said anything about following her?" Rachel looked like she was about to argue, but then she glanced back at the woods and seemed to think better of it. "But we can't just leave her out there." "She's gone," I said. "And whatever's going on with her, it's not something we can deal with. Let's just go back to the cabin and figure this out in the morning." We hurried past the fire pit. It felt as though the forest was consolidating itself at our backs, forming a barrier we would not be permitted to cross again. Inside, the lock clicked shut. We sat together, listening for any sign of the woman, but the woods outside had gone silent. Morning came, dragging with it the kind of exhaustion that no amount of coffee or sunlight could shake. None of us said much at breakfast. The memory of the woman hung over the table. Kyle was the first to surrender to the inevitable. He prodded at the congealed eggs on his plate with a plastic fork. "So, is no one gonna talk about the naked grandma in the woods, or are we just pretending last night didn't happen?" Jess glared. "I think we all saw it, Kyle. You don't have to be an ass about it." "An ass?" he muttered. "I'm just saying, that wasn't normal. People don't just do that. Does that really make me an ass?" "No, she could have been sick," Rachel offered. "Maybe she wandered off from somewhere." "From where?" Luke asked. "We're in the middle of nowhere. Closest house is what, 20 miles? Guys, can we not?" I said, rubbing my temples. "Let's just get through today. Maybe she was some random drifter and she's long gone by now." Jess snorted. "Yeah, sure, long gone. Totally normal behavior to crawl around naked and mumble in the dirt before just taking off back home." We divided ourselves into smaller groups to continue the cleanup work we'd come here to do, but the atmosphere around the camp had changed. It wasn't just because of the woman. It was everything. The woods, the cabins, even the sky. It all felt off. By mid-afternoon, I was clearing dead brush from the trail near the main cluster of cabins when I found something. Another small bundle composed of twigs and feathers and what appeared to be animal bones. The whole of it lashed together with frayed red string. It hung from a low-hanging branch, turning slowly in the faint breeze. "What the hell is this? Found one too?" Luke's voice startled me. "They're everywhere," he said. "I've counted 5 so far." Jess found one tied to the side of a cabin, and Rachel's freaking out about them. "Aren't we all?" Jess appeared behind him, one of the strange talismans dangling from her fingers. "So what do we do? Just leave them here? Hope the arts and crafts witches don't come back for round 2. She extended out her arm to look at the twigs. "These things gotta go. Curse be damned." "I think we need to tell someone," Rachel said, jogging up the trail to join us. "These things weren't here yesterday, and I already took down a few with Kyle. Someone's been here." "Yeah, no shit," Jess said. "Probably the same someone who was crawling around last night." "Stop," I said. "We don't know what's going on, but freaking out isn't going to help." "Prick." Jess snorted. Whatever Rachel was about to levy died unborn when Kyle called out from the direction of the cabins. "Hey guys, you might want to see this." We found him at the fire pit, hunched over the bare earth. As we got closer, I saw what he was looking at, a strange symbol etched into the dirt. It was a circle, fringed by irregular lines that jutted outward from the center, the impression of the sun, maybe, or something that resembled the sun. "It's fresh," Kyle said, tracing the edge of the symbol with his finger. "I walked past here last night to make sure the fire was out. This wasn't here before I turned in." "Okay, great," Jess said, throwing her hands up. "So now we've got creepy symbols, freaky art projects, and a naked lady crawling around in the woods. Are we sure this isn't some elaborate prank? Like, are there hidden cameras somewhere? If it's a prank, it's a damn good one, Luke muttered. Rachel bit her lip. I don't think this is a joke. I think we're being warned. Warned about what? Kyle asked, standing up. The hours that followed passed beneath a blanket of unspoken tension. No one ventured far from the cabins, though being next to each other offered little comfort. Every rustle of leaves, every shift of shadow between the trunks wound our nerves tighter. By the time the sun began to dip below the horizon, we made our way back to the cabin for dinner. I noticed Jess looking over her shoulder. Hey Mike, do you think she's still out there? I said nothing. Didn't need to. We both already had our guess. When we finished dinner, if you could call microwaved instant noodles a dinner, the atmosphere within the cabin had grown uncomfortable. No one among us had the desire to confess their fears aloud. Yet Rachel's repeated glances toward the darkened windows and Kyle's refusal to relinquish his grip on an iron fire poker said everything that needed saying. So, we tried to distract ourselves with a card game. 3 of a kind, Jess said, slapping her cards on the table. Pay up, losers, Kyle grunted. You're cheating. I know it. I don't need to cheat to beat you, Kyle, Jess said, smirking, though her eyes darted toward the window. Rachel stood, wringing her hands. I can't do this anymore. Do what? Luke asked. Pretend everything's fine. It's not fine. There's something wrong here. The symbols, the bundles, the woman, this whole place feels off. Great, Kyle said, tossing his cards on the table. Let's all panic. That'll totally fix everything. She's not wrong, though, Jess said. It's not just her. You all feel it, don't you? What happened next began as a faint intrusion, a mumbling drifting through the trees. My stomach knotted as the sound swelled. It wasn't the same as last night. Last night there had only been a single voice. This was different. This was many. Tell me that's the wind, Jess said. It's not the wind, Luke muttered, already reaching for the flashlight. We huddled by the window. Beyond the pane, the world had become a theater of shadow and half-shadow, the fire pit little more than a suggestion of darker dark against the surround of trees. Then the murmuring coalesced, and the shadows resolved themselves into figures stepping into the open. From the woods came old women. At least they looked like old women. A shuffling procession of heads hanging toward the earth, as if searching for something lost in the grass. The moonlight caught their faces in passing, and what the light revealed was a terrible sameness. Visages scored with deep channels and wrinkles, features slack and bloodless and empty. They were near exact reflections of the woman we had encountered previously. Now 4 of them, words spilling off their tongues like the noise pebbles might make grinding together in some flooded cavern. What the hell? Kyle recoiled from the glass. Are they... Rachel started but didn't finish. They're old, Jess said. Really old. The women gave no indication they knew we were there. They orbited the fire pit in a strange, bizarre dance. One among them halted mid-step and threw back her head in a silent scream that contained, somehow, more emotion than any sound could have carried. We should go out there, Rachel said suddenly. Are you insane? Jess snapped. Did you not see what happened last night? We don't go near them. They're just women, Rachel insisted, shaking. What if they're lost? What if they're... They're not lost, Luke said. Look at them. Does that seem lost to you? We all turned back to the window. The women had started to move again, this time drifting back toward the woods. At the threshold of the forest, one of them stopped. She turned. She looked directly at the cabin. Her eyes were filmed over, milky white. But somehow I felt her looking through the cabin, like she could see us. See me? Close the curtains, I whispered. Jess moved fast, yanking the curtain shut. We all stood there for a moment. Even after the forest swallowed the last of whatever sound they made, we remained clustered in the room's center. They're leaving, Luke said. So, do old women normally do this? Kyle asked. Jess, Rachel, any illumination on what we just saw? Shut up, Kyle, Jess and Rachel said. Every groan of the cabin's old wood, every sigh of wind against the walls became footsteps, became the sound of shuffling approaching our door. I lay with my eyes fixed on the ceiling, trying to convince myself that the night had ended. That morning would bring distance from what we had witnessed. But somewhere beneath the pretense of hope, I understood with awful clarity that the women would return. They would return, and they would keep returning until whatever they had come for was theirs. The morning after, none of us found much to say. We gathered around the cabin's modest dining table, nursing cups of instant coffee while doing our best to avoid meeting one another's eyes. The daylight that filtered through the windows felt insufficient, as if the sun itself labored to pierce some unseen veil hanging between our world and whatever lay beyond it. More than once I caught myself glancing toward the glass, half expecting to discover one of those women standing motionless at the clearing's edge. "I've been thinking about this. We have to leave," Rachel said, dark circles forming beneath her eyes. "Today, right now. We should go to the cops." Jess nodded. "Yeah, this place is messed up. I don't care if the camp leader gets mad. He can deal with it." "Fine by me," Kyle muttered. "Let's pack up and get the hell out of here." Luke set his mug down. "Okay, but what's the plan? The car can only take so much gear." "Do we? We'll figure it out," Rachel interrupted. "We'll leave the camping supplies or whatever. We just have to—" A loud clang and screech echoed through the cabin, cutting her off. "What the hell was that?" Jess asked. "Sounded like it came from the car," Luke said, standing quickly. We all grabbed whatever we could find, flashlights, a crowbar, a broom, and headed outside. The clearing was empty, but the sound had definitely come from the direction of the parking area. When we reached the car, my stomach dropped. Both tires on the driver's side had been slashed, deflated into sad, crumpled shapes against the gravel. A long, ragged gash ran down each one. "What the fuck?" Jess muttered. "Not just the tires," Luke said, crouching near the hood. He indicated a pool of dark liquid spreading beneath the chassis. "They cut the fuel line, too." Kyle kicked at a rock. "Shit, are you kidding me?" "Who the hell does this?" "The women," Rachel said. "It was them. It has to be." Jess threw up her hands. "Okay, great. So now we're stranded in fucktown. What do we do now?" "We wait," Luke said, standing up. "The camp leader's supposed to show up tomorrow morning, right?" "That's, 24 hours? We can survive one more night." "One more night?" Rachel cracked. "Did you see what they were doing out there? What if they come back? What if they don't leave this time?" "We don't have a choice," I said. "We're not walking 20 miles through the woods with no cell service. We stay and we stick together. They're 100 years old. We can handle it." "Fine," Jess grunted. "But I'm not just standing here like a sitting duck. We're boarding this place up, deal." We made ourselves useful as best we could. Luke and Kyle took hammers and nails to the cabin windows, fixing plywood over the glass, while Jess and I ventured into the tree line to gather fallen branches and broken limbs. Rachel stationed herself at the radio, her fingers working the dial, searching for something, anything amidst the static. "We should have left yesterday," she said when I came back inside. She was right. As afternoon surrendered to evening, Jess found another bundle laying near the fire pit, this one bigger than the others, with what looked like a tuft of animal fur tied to it. "We didn't touch that one." By sunset, we had all retreated to the main cabin. "Okay," Luke said. "If they show up again, we stick to the plan. Stay together, stay inside, and don't open the door." "What if they break in?" Kyle asked. "They won't," Luke said. "Like Mike said, they're old. We'll be fine." Nobody believed him. The sky outside darkened and night began with the wind. The shutters clattered against the walls. The trees beyond the windows groaned beneath the strain, their trunks threatening to splinter. Luke had secured the doors hours before, sliding the deadbolt home and bracing the frame with the cabin's 2 spindly tables. Still, none of it felt like enough. "What time is it?" Jess asked. "Late," Luke said. He was crouched by the window, keeping an eye on the clearing through a crack in the boarded shutters. Jess laughed bitterly. "Great, super helpful." "Thanks, Luke." "Cut it out," I said. "My watch isn't working. If that's all Luke's got, it's all Luke's got. Let's just stay calm." "Calm?" she snapped. "Did you miss the part where we're trapped in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of psycho witches who slashed our tires and cut our fuel line? You want me to calm down? I want you to stop freaking everyone out." Oh, that's rich coming from the man who... Before Jess could finish, Luke held up a hand. Quiet. We all froze as we strained to hear what he did. At first there was nothing but the wind and the trees, and then I heard it, the sound I'd been dreading since the sunset. The chanting. They're here, Luke said, we squinting out through the cracks of the boards. Outside, the fire pit at the clearing's heart pulsed with an orange breath. Embers we had watched die hours before, now born again. Figures drifted through the darkness at its edges, snatched backward and forward, their bodies lithe and stuttering, like crows being yanked on a leash. They were the same women from the previous night or whatever was left of them. Their skin hung in great swags like blankets, torn free of the meat beneath, and that meat gleamed, almost cheerfully, in the ember light. Their faces were emptied gourds, eyes cataract, mouths chirping in a synchronized mouth clacks. One of them arched backward, her head lolling against her shoulder blade as her voice squealed. Another hauled something behind her through the dirt. A burlap sack that thrashed and writhed and bled, trailing a dark path across the packed earth. Are those... Kyle stopped. One woman reached into the bag and pulled out a struggling, writhing animal. A rabbit, I think. The woman held it high above her head, her muttering rising to a fever pitch. And then she opened that animal as one might open a book, right down its center. Rachel sobbed and stumbled back from the window, but I couldn't look away. Blood poured down the woman's arms, pooling at her feet, clotting in the recesses of her wrinkles. She flung the carcass into the fire, where it spat and crackled. Her words swelled, acquiring teeth. The others all reached into the sack and drew forth more small bodies, more broken things, a baby fox, a squirrel, something whose shape I could not name, and they spilled the animal's blood into the fire as though feeding it, as though it were a mouth that would never be satiated. Stop watching. Jess's fingers found my arm, dug in, pulled. We need to do something. Do what? Kyle hissed. What the hell are we supposed to do against that? We can't just sit here, Jess snapped. They haven't come for us yet, Luke said, eyes still glued to the window. We stay inside. We stay quiet. Maybe they'll... He trailed off. But we all knew how that sentence was supposed to end. Maybe they'll leave. Flames clawed at the night sky, their orange-red tongues licking higher, casting elongated shadows that stretched and writhed among the pines. From somewhere within that circle of light, one of the figures released what might have been screaming, had it retained anything human. Instead, it was a kind of animalistic exultation rising above the others as she threw her arms wide and tipped her head back to the sky. Spines curved at angles that shattered vertebrae, all in sawtoothed motions. The pop of dislocating joints and the snap of bone played counterpoint to their wailing, a percussion of transformation. Her head rotated, there was no other word for it, rotated to an angle that spoke of damage, of rupture, of the failure of everything, and her eyes found the cabin. I clapped my palms to my ears. The sound persisted, not around me but through me, resonating in the cavities of my body and the chambers of my skull. The figures strode forward. They came from all sides now. They know we're here, Rachel said, and her voice was the voice of a child, of someone who has learned too late that the monster under the bed is real. Has always been real. Get away from the window, Luke ordered. I was already moving, my feet carrying me away from the glass, away from those dead fish-eyed elderly women, while their throats crescendoed into a wall of sound. I felt it in my fillings in the cage of my chest. My sight swam. Darkness crowded the edges of my vision, and then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Wait, Jess said. They're not. The first impact shuddered through the door, every eye in the room fixed upon that barrier. It groaned in its frame. A second blow. A third, each arriving with greater force, as though something outside were testing the limits of what wood and nail could withstand. They're going to break in, Rachel whimpered. Luke grabbed the crowbar from the floor and stepped in front of the door. Stay back, he grunted. The thudding stopped. And then from the other side of the door came a rasp. Let us in. It carried no question in its cadence. It was a statement of fact and instruction, something that had been spoken so many times, to so many doors in so many dark places that it had worn smooth. All empathy eroded from its tone. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stand there. But my feet were rooted to the floor. "Don't move," Luke whispered. "Don't say anything." The voice returned, nearer, as if the speaker had pressed its cheek against the wood. "Let us in, let us in, let us in." The firelight flickered outside, and through the gaps in the shutters I could see their silhouettes arranged in a loose circle, numerous, waiting. The voice stopped. In what followed, there remained only the ragged orchestra of our breathing and the almost considerate crackle of flames outside. "Are they?" Rachel started, brittle with the tremor of one who cannot quite believe what she is asking. "Are they done?" Luke remained fixed at the door. "No, they're not." As if in answer, the window behind us shattered. Glass came inward in a glittering cascade, and Jess's scream cut through the chaos as a hand that was not quite a hand, and could not be called a hand in any honest sense, thrust through the gap. The appendage appeared corpse-drowned and waterlogged, the skin hanging from it in swinging folds. Whatever sodden flesh remained had separated from the structure beneath, and now flopped aimlessly. "Get back!" Luke shouted, the crowbar singing through the air to crack against the knuckles. The appendage withdrew with a hiss. "Block it! Block it now!" Kyle seized a plank and drove it against the pane. Before we could catch our breath, another window shattered. Then another. The sound was deafening, each break followed by the relentless murmurings and scratchings of those things clawing at the cabin's defenses. "They're everywhere," Jess screamed, backing toward the corner of the room. "Basement!" Luke shouted, pointing toward the trapdoor near the kitchen. "We can barricade ourselves down there." We ran. Rachel hauled me forward when my legs refused their duty, and Jess reached the trapdoor first, throwing it open with a surge that sent dust billowing. "Hurry!" she yelled. Kyle descended. Rachel followed. Luke shoved me toward the opening with the flat of his palm. "Go." The ladder groaned beneath my weight as I climbed down into air that tasted of mildew, of earth, of things long buried and best forgotten. Rachel's flashlight knifed through the black, revealing a ceiling cramped enough to force us onto our haunches, with a floor cluttered with the accumulated debris of years. Luke slammed the trapdoor shut above us just as another crash rang out from the cabin. Something collided with the cabin's main floor. The impact shuddered through the ceiling. We gathered against the far wall. I let myself believe, for one desperate and foolish instant, that we had bought ourselves time. Then the trapdoor creaked. "No," Jess whispered, gripping a kitchen knife so tightly her hand was shaking. "No, no, no." Splinters raced across the door's surface as a tremendous weight settled against it. And through the widening cracks, that ceaseless muttering poured down like water, like a flood that would not be contained. The trapdoor shattered. The first of them descended into the cellar in a heap of twisted limbs. Legs splayed beneath her, facing a dozen different directions when she landed, yet she rose as if the damage were merely an inconvenience. Flesh drooped from her frame in rags, and those milk-white eyes burned bright even in the dark. Jess screamed in frustration and rushed forward, the blade flashing, but the hag moved with a liquid speed, contorting around the strike and driving Jess to the floor. The shriek that tore from her throat was immediate as claws unzipped her chest like a gift, shirt and skin peeling apart to display the glistening work underneath. "Get off her!" Kyle roared, charging forward with the fire poker. He brought it down across the hag's face with a brutal crack, but the blow seemed to mean nothing to her. She swiveled toward him, her jaw distending to expose a maw of serrated yellowed teeth. More of them dropped into the basement, finding Jess on the floor. The room filled with chaos, shouts and snarls, and the slick, gruesome sound of meat being torn from meat. "Run!" Luke shouted, grabbing my arm and dragging me toward the far corner of the basement, where a narrow crawl space disappeared into the building's original foundations. I stumbled, my foot catching on something soft and warm. I did not want to look, yet my eyes turned against my will. A piece of Jess lay crumpled on the concrete, a dark stain blossoming a trail back to her limp form. A group of those things were dragging her upward toward the broken trapdoor. "No!" I screamed, but Luke hauled me back. "She's gone!" he yelled. "We have to go!" I couldn't process it, couldn't believe it. Jess, the loudest, most assertive of us, was gone. Rachel followed her moments later. As we crawled through the cramped, humid tunnel, she wailed, "No, get off me!" I twisted around in time to see one of the hags raking at her ankle, tripping her, dragging her backward into the dark. Her shrieks ceased abruptly as a second hag appeared behind her, fist tangled in her hair, pulling her into nothing. "Rachel!" I screamed. "I said keep moving!" Luke hissed. The crawl space opened into a broader section of the foundation, the walls damp and disintegrating. Kyle was already crouched there, cradling his arm, which dangled by a string. His complexion had gone yellow, eyes fixed and staring. "They're everywhere," he mumbled. "We can't, there's too many of them." Luke crouched beside him, grabbing him by the shoulders. "Stay with me. We're going to make it." A shrill, inhuman screech echoed through the foundation. The light from Rachel's discarded flashlight flickered and I saw them. A dozen hags flooded into the space, twisted forms moving, searching, claws scraping against stone as they fluttered toward us. "Fuck it." Kyle snapped and lurched forward to meet with them, swinging the poker with his working arm. He struck one of the creatures, but another collided with him from the flank, sending him sprawling. I didn't see what happened next. I didn't want to. Luke seized my hand and pulled me into a narrow fissure in the foundation, iron piping surrounding us. We pressed ourselves into the tight space, the pipes biting into my back. "Don't move," Luke whispered, faint beneath the sound of Kyle being unmade. Near us, the hags prowled through the space, snuffing the air, their mouth sounds seeping into the crevices of my skull. One of them stopped mere inches from our hiding spot, its head swiveling toward us. It cocked its head, those empty white orbs sweeping over the metalwork. For one agonizing moment I believed it would reach for us. Then it turned and dissolved into the blackness. Luke and I stayed in that crack for what felt like hours, too afraid to move. When we finally crawled out, the basement was empty. The walls were splattered with blood, and the air reeked of copper and death. Jess, Kyle, Rachel. They were gone. I fixed my gaze on the floor before me, struggling to keep from focusing on the blood that freckled the stone or the furrows carved into the walls. My mind was fractured, cycling through images of Jess's broken body, Rachel's shrieks, and the sounds they made as they had taken Kyle apart. I did not realize tears were sliding down my face until Luke's hand found my arm. His face was streaked with dirt and sweat, eyes scooped out and vacant. He said nothing, only gestured toward the faint sliver of brightness leaking through the shattered trapdoor overhead. "It's over," he mouthed. "Too far gone to form actual words. You don't know that." "I do," he insisted. "Listen." I made myself listen. The guttural chanting, the scrape of crooked nails against stone, the screaming. It had all died, and it had been dead for hours. My mind had been replaying it on a loop. Luke's hand extended outward into the open space of the cellar, trembling, testing the air. When nothing descended to claim him, he motioned for me to follow. It required every fragment of will I possessed to drag myself from that fissure in the earth. Each shadowed alcove of the basement held death. Luke and I scaled the splintered remains of the ladder and pressed the broken trapdoor upward. The cabin had been eviscerated. Furniture lay overturned and broken, the walls carved and ruptured, the floorboards painted with slick crimson. I attempted not to examine the stains too closely or what lay strewn among them at what was left of our friends. "Keep moving," Luke muttered, hoarse. "Don't stop." We stepped into the clearing. The fire pit was still smoldering. When the first light of dawn broke through the trees, I almost wept. The yellow glow didn't feel real, like it was some cruel hallucination meant to lure us deeper into the nightmare. But the further we walked, the brighter it became, and then we heard the rumbling of an engine. A truck was parked just off the dirt road, a beat-up old thing with the camp's logo painted on the side. The camp leaders. Luke broke into a run, shouting and waving his arms, but I hung back. I watched as the door opened and a man stepped out, his face wrinkled and weathered but undeniably human. "Whoa, what happened to you?" the camp leader asked. Luke fell to his knees. "They're dead," he said. "They're all dead." The man's expression crumpled and Luke told him everything, words tumbling out in a jumbled mess. The camp leader's face grew darker with every sentence, eyes darting toward the woods as if he expected something to come bursting out at any moment. "We're leaving," he said. "Now." He drove us into town, where the police and paramedics were waiting. I don't remember much after that. Just flashes being wrapped in a blanket, answering questions I didn't have answers to, the strange way they looked at us. They searched the camp. They didn't find anything. No bodies, no blood. Not even a single claw mark. The police said it was a trauma response, that we'd imagined things in the chaos of the night. That something awful must have happened, but we worked ourselves up into a frenzy. But I know what I saw, what I heard. They're still out there, waiting for another summer and another camp.